Come on. Yay! There's Rosie. Hi. Can we do this? I actually already recorded this video, and upon completing it, discovered that the whole thing was in portrait mode. So I'm going to try it again, this time with Rosie beside me. Rosie, this is what I'm going to do. What are you going to do? What are you going to do? I understand, but no. Okay? Rosie very patiently took a nap the first time I did this video, but she's done with her nap now. Protector of the Small by Tamora Pierce, featuring Keladry of Mindelan, series that I read and reread until some of the books started to fall apart. I am going to reread them again over the next week or two. Spoilers abound. That, at least I can say this time that I forgot to say last time. I have notes, but this is not scripted. I am going to say all sorts of things about the Protector of the Small series, about Tortall in general, and probably about a couple of the other series that are in the same world as the Protector of the Small. Tamora Pierce is a young adult fantasy author, primarily young adult fantasy author, who published between 1983, starting with The Song of the Lioness Quartet, up through 2018, was her most recent published book. Protector of the Small was published between 1999 and 2002. That was right after the Harry Potter books started to hit the shelves in the United States. The relevance of that being, it demonstrated to publishers that kids and middle grade and young adult audiences would read longer books, which allowed Tamora Pierce to write more for Kel than she was able to for Alanna and for Daine in the Song of the Lioness and the Immortals series. Not to vary the clickbait title too far, but that is what Harry Potter did for the best thing that Harry Potter did for young adult fantasy, was showing publishers that people will read longer books, especially if they're good books, which these very much are. I have 7 points to talk about, starting with Kel herself. Kel is a Lady Knight. That is what she wanted to be. That is what she pursued. She is the first girl openly pursuing knighthood in over 100 years. Alanna became a knight by disguising herself as a boy for 8 years in order to earn her shield. Kel is under intense scrutiny and observation by a lot of people who expect her to fail or really want her to fail. She is the youngest child of ambassador parents, noble diplomats, that took her and a couple of her younger siblings to the Yamani Islands. Yamani Islands are a sort of Japanese-inspired fantasy country in this fantasy world, and it's not that they don't feel their emotions, but they do not express their emotions. It's considered a little bit disgraceful if you can't control your expression and basically keep yourself smooth as a stone or an unbothered pond kind of thing. So Kel is about 5 when she's taken to the Yamani Islands, and so she becomes acculturated in that way. She learns to conceal how she feels, to process how she feels, but privately. That serves her when she goes for her training. Probably not a surprise that she faces bullying, sexism, and hazing from her peers and from older adults. So she keeps this blank face so that no one knows if or how much they're upsetting her or what she's feeling, and that's very frustrating to the people who would like to break her. She early on proves she's cool under fire, and as one of her yearmates says, saves their bacon more than once. Kel also was written unapologetically in a sort of direct response to Alanna. Alanna herself, not in terms of writing, but just in terms of their world, says so to Kel at the end of the 3rd book when they finally get to have a conversation with each other, that nobody could have done what Alanna did. She had the magic, she had the hand of the goddess on her, she pursued these legendary artifacts. Nobody needed to bother to try to do what she did because nobody could do what she did. But Kel has no magic. I didn't say that earlier. She's the only Tamora Pierce protagonist character with 0 magical abilities. She's real in a way that Alanna isn't, so people can try to do what Kel did. Kel just is a determinator. Has no quit in her, drags her ass out of bed when she doesn't want to and she's tired, runs uphill because she knows it's better for her conditioning, fights older boys and considers it training, uses weighted practice weapons because one of the boys gave her a weighted practice lance to try and make her quit because it made it seem like her arms were so much weaker than her males that she kept struggling with this lance. Well, when she discovered that it was lead weighted, she put weights in the rest of her practice equipment to bring up her strength. Kel makes choices that bear fruit in ways that if you want to, you can try. Whereas with Alanna, her training you could try, but when it comes to magic and the legend that she became, nobody could even try to match that. And Kel's not trying to match that. Post-series Word of God from Tamora Pierce, Kel is confirmed asexual, aromantic. There was some crushes that are in the series, but even within the series, she's more invested in her training and her goals than in pursuing any kind of actual relationship. And so for Tamora Pierce, as she worked a little bit on Kel and on her other creations, as she says on her website, it just became clear to her that Kel's priorities was not finding a partner. The idea of getting involved with somebody was just sort of distracting and confusing, and she had other things to do. Are you staying or are you going? I'm going to keep going. Leadership, her discipline. Oh, her primary weapon is a Japanese-style naginata. So that's my notes on Kel herself. Oh, one last one. Big anti-bullying. Sort of mentioned it with the hazing earlier, but that's one of her character-defining early scenes is rescuing a bag full of kittens from a bunch of boys who are going to drown them. Okay, actually, this kind of segues into my point number 2. My one favorite Kel moment from each book. I was actually describing these to my friend some while ago, and that is ultimately what pushed me into doing these videos, because I was just going on, and she was a great audience, but doesn't know Tamora Pierce either, and it just gave me that I want to share Tamora Pierce with more people. So, anti-bullying, Kel very much is, and 2 of my favorite scenes center that. In First Test, the first book, she comes across a couple of older boys pushing around one of her yearmates, and the first time she comes across it, she leaves. She doesn't want to embarrass the other boy, and she's not really sure if she should interfere because she has at this point accepted that a certain amount of hazing from the older kids is tradition and therefore appropriate. Things like run to my room and grab my homework, run to the library and grab a book for me, fill up my inkwell for me real quick kind of thing. But what she's seeing is a kid being pushed down, being pushed into spilled ink, having insults thrown at them, and that is not what Kel is going to tolerate. So the second time she comes across it, she starts a fight with the older boys. In that scene, she learns, has the thought, next time I take on multiple opponents, I make sure I have the wall at my back. So that's First Test. Second book, Page. Same boys, different new boy. And on that, okay, I forgot to mention, so Kel, at dinner for her first couple of years, she will wear dresses just so that nobody forgets that she is a girl. Page, first or second night back in training, and she's wearing her dress to go to dinner. She comes across these older boys picking on one of the new yearmates, and she's like, well, I didn't expect to have to fight this early, but kilts up her skirt, here we go, and puts the wall at her back. And how it's written, it's not pointed to. It's not, oh, remember that fight from that first book that she learned she needs to put the wall at her back? It's just, she moves into position, and the fight proceeds. That is what keeps me coming back. That kind of humor and detail that's just put in there without being pointed at. Book 3, Squire. So Kel has been focusing on strength training and other exercises to make herself the equal of her male peers, or in fact superior to those who do not practice as much as she does, or who don't have the same physical build that she does. I mentioned that she was written in direct response to Alanna. Alanna is 5'4" and stocky because she also trains in exercises, but not exceptionally built. She has never been defeated in a sword fight, but that's because she has greater stamina, speed, and agility that she has built up. Kel ends up being 5'11". That would have happened no matter what she chose in life. Because she focused on building her strength, she's got significant musculature. I read somewhere that by the end of the series, she's built like an oak tree. Squire. She is the squire to Knight Commander Raoul of the King's Own, which is one of the military branches in the series. Larent has been his standard bearer for a few years. Larent is a disgraced son of a disgraced noble household. It's been hard for him to get any sort of position, so it's a big deal that Raoul made him his standard bearer. Larent has been taking care of a lot of the duties that would fall to a squire, but Raoul hasn't had a squire. Now he has Kel. Kel will be taking on some of those duties. One night, Larent sort of ambushes Kel in a dark area between tents, grabs her arm to say what he has to say about her not taking his place. And Kel just flexes her bicep, pops his hand off, and keeps going because she doesn't have time for his insecurities. And then Lady Knight. Kel is given the command of a refugee camp at the outbreak of a war in the north. You're having more people come into this confined space. They've lost their homes, and a couple of these guys get into a fight over a girl one night shortly after they come to this refugee camp. So Kel ends up on site, and yes, these two men are both larger than her, but she has spent the last 8 years training the right time and leverage to affect combat. And so I can't remember exactly what it is, but it's something like that. She comes up behind them, grabs them as they're bear hugging each other in their fight, and grabs them by the hair, smashes their heads together, and holds them up while they figure out what the heck just happened, smashes them together again when they won't stop, then proceeds to have a conversation with them that ends with, and I promise I won't even remember your faces in the morning if you promise to knock this shit off. So I like Kel, and those are the scenes that I shared from each book that are among my favorites. Point 3, animals. More spoilers. Daine is a character from the Immortal series, the main character from that series. She has animal magic. She can't really stop her presence from causing the cognitive abilities of animals around her to improve. At one point in one of the books, one of the horse handlers says that when horses come in from outside of the palace, he's starting to feel like they're stupid because they're not the same as the horses that live in the palace. And there isn't really anything Daine can do about that besides not be around the palace. That leads to Kel. She already has a caretaking disposition. The series is called Protector of the Small. That doesn't only apply to people. She starts feeding the sparrows outside her window. Due to the Daine effect, they become extra loyal and attached to her. Peachblossom is her horse, who has a stubborn streak that led to him being abused by his previous owners, and to the point that the horse handler wasn't really sure what he was going to do with him if he wouldn't cooperate with one of the pages, specifically Kel. Kel goes to Daine, and Daine has a conversation with Peachblossom. Kel doesn't want to change his nature. She just wants him to stop stepping on her feet and making training hard. So they make a deal through Daine. Peachblossom is an integral part of Kel's sense of self. The second book introduces Jump. He's a little bit of a mixed dog. We don't know what he is, maybe pit bull-ish kind of dog. Small enough to travel in the saddle of a horse, but big enough to take down people in combat. Oh, and then the griffin. Oh my gosh, the griffin. So the animals, all these animals have their cognition improved kind of by exposure to Daine, whether she wants to do it or not. Then you have this wild baby griffin who acts like an actual wild animal and cannot communicate with Daine. With the magic around them, baby griffins get stolen because of their magical properties, and so parent griffins will kill anyone who they sense has handled their baby, and it's a magical sense. You can't wash it off. So when Kel sticks her hand in the bag and is the one to touch the baby griffin, she is the only one that can handle it, and it becomes a burden responsibility for about a full year. It's messy, it's ungrateful, it's a danger to her other animals, but she just takes care of it anyway. She does what she needs. She does her duty to this creature that fell into her hands and does ultimately get a magical gift for her troubles, for a character with no magic. Yeah, so if you like animals in general, Tamora Pierce is a good bet. There's going to be some kind of animal with distinct personality, some kind of animal that's probably going to impact the plot in a small or large way. Fourth, the supporting characters. They're just an element that I like. Specifically, Neal is Kel's platonic for life best friend. She has a little bit of a schoolgirl crush on him, but she outgrows that pretty quickly. They're just funny. In my failed prior recording that ended up in portrait style, I ended up just cracking up at one point thinking about the different quotes that are in this between Kel and Neal and their humor with each other and snarking at each other. At one point, her and their yearmates just end up beating Neal with breadsticks because he won't shut up about this noble lady that he's got a crush on. And it's just a very funny scene. It's something that sort of scene was something that was really missing from the Song of the Lioness series. There just wasn't page space allowed for that kind of silliness. And I feel like that was very deliberately included for the yearmates in these, at least the first 3 books. Or at least the first 2 books. No, the first 3 books. Kel has good parents. perhaps the only main character who has both alive and good parents. Her Knight Master is an excellent mentor for her. Neal always supported her for reasons that didn't have to do with her, but then became about the fact that he just straight up appreciated her and the way she opened his eyes to a lot of things. But her other yearmates, it did take more time for them to warm up to the girl in their year, but ultimately she, I said it before, saves all their bacon at one point or another, and they come to realize that she just wants to do the same thing that they want to do, become a knight. The world building was 0.5. So again, there's more page space in this and there's more depth given to the other cultures, but also to Tortall, because she's with the King's Own, who show up where they're needed around Tortall. And there's also a grand progress in Squire. Kel gets to travel around and bring the reader to all these different areas of Tortall. We don't get to see the Yamani Islands, but there is the diplomatic marriage, which is being set up in Squire and Lady Knight. So there is a little bit of introduction of, it's not quite a clash of cultures, but it is the meeting of two cultures. And Kel as a sort of bridge, being that she lived there for a good chunk of her childhood. The princess that ends up coming over ends up being a girl that she knew but didn't realize was one of the princesses. Antagonist characters was my 6th point, and I put this as, this is the weakest aspect of this series because they're not that important. Like, they're important because they push elements of the plot, but what's focused on in the writing is the character, Kel, her growth, and the relationships with those around her, and challenges either to her perspective or from her to the perspectives of those around her. The villains exists mostly as obstacles that you're not meant to care about. You're not meant to have conflicted feelings about. Joren is one of the main bullies for her in her page years. He's described as beautiful. The implication is kind of that he is probably charming and charismatic to anyone except Kel, and Kel is our POV character. He's a good fighter. He's a good student. He is chivalrous, I guess, but he doesn't actually perform or demonstrate that in text. He's referred to as the best of us by the people in his family. But what it comes down to is his sexist values, conservative values, that women do not belong in any sort of combat military setting. Kel is a disgrace to womanhood, that her presence is dishonorable to the entire kingdom of Tortall. It's a mockery of what it is to be a knight, and he never lets go of that. Ultimately, that leads to his death in the Chamber of the Ordeal. The Chamber of the Ordeal is a magical entity, perhaps even beyond God level, who at one point describes looking at human existence as trying to see the inside of a fishbowl. But either way, so that's the entity that controls the Chamber of the Ordeal, puts would-be knights and would-be kings through traumas, terrors, their psychological weaknesses. It varies by character. Joren, unmarked, dies in the chamber. My theory is that whatever scenario the chamber put him in involved having to help Kel in order to achieve something, and Joren would rather die than help Kel. And he did, I think, is what happened. John is the king of Tortall, an unexpected antagonist, perhaps. He is an age mate to Alana and her friend and briefly her lover in her series. And then in the Immortal series, Daine is very fond of him, which is fair. I mean, she was a random commoner orphan who the king was very nice to from the go. But for Kel, he allowed the training master to put her on a year of probation for the book First Test, at the end of which it was going to be up to the training master to decide if she had proven that she could continue with the training program or if he was just going to kick her out, and that was it. It was his call. John allowed that, and for that reason, Kel never really likes him. She does learn to kind of understand him, and she does respect the authority of him as a king, but she always feels the sting of that injustice, of that condition put upon her in her first year that nobody else had to deal with. And the training master, Wyldon, Sir Wyldon of Cavil, Lord Sir Wyldon of Cavil, he's actually the strongest of your antagonist characters because he doesn't stay an antagonist. He does grow. He is misogynist and sexist in the same way that Joren is. He really He thinks that Joren would make a really good knight, and then feels very responsible when Joren dies, because part of his job as the training master was to identify if a boy wasn't going to survive the ordeal, to help correct whatever the issue was, or encourage that boy not to pursue knighthood and face that risk. He doesn't perceive that. Joren dies. He takes responsibility for that. In that same moment, Kel is sharing with him that he is the kind of knight that she wants to be. And Wyldon's response is the fact that he says, I am not, but the fact that you think that is probably one of the greatest honors that I will ever receive. And additionally, possibly one of the best things that can be said about his time as a training master is the fact that he trained her, and given all that he did to try to make her quit, that's not right. And then there, at the end of Lady Knight, Blayce the Nothing Man is the final boss. And he's a nothing man. Kel is just so almost disappointed that such a nothing person is such a monster who causes such devastation. My last point is the impact that Protector of the Small has, both in universe and real world. There aren't any books that feature other Lady Knights, but Tamora Pierce's plan and intention was at least a couple other books with a couple other young Lady Knights becoming squires. Kel opened the door in a way that Alanna unlocked the door. And then real world. I haven't watched all of the Tamora Pierce books videos on YouTube, but I've watched a lot of them. And kind of general consensus sense that I have is it's between Alanna and Kel which series or character is sort of a favorite for people who like the Tortall series more than the Emmeline series. I mean, I think it's pretty clear where I fall. Kel is. Oh, looking at my notes. So there is one thing I forgot to get into this recording about Kel personality and how she's perceived. There are some people that feel that Kel is a self-righteous prig. She is an idealist to a fault. I can't argue with that. When Kel believes that she has the view of the correct course of action with the idea of no one is getting picked on, no one is having injustice against them, that is the route that she is going to pursue. And you're going to have a hard time deterring her from that. In universe, though, I want to say the position Kel was in of being under scrutiny, people wanting her to fail, she could not afford to make mistakes in a way that a real person would or could. I mean, even Alanna, going for her knighthood disguised as a boy, could do things that Kel can't in this period of time anyway. Yeah, she just couldn't afford to make a mistake, or she would have pulled down any possibility of another Lady Knight for another 100 years, probably. So that's all my notes. I think that's everything I wanted to say pre-rereading the Protector of the Small series. Before I end this video, I may have made an error in one of my first videos regarding the law around knighthood. I said that it wasn't illegal for Alanna to attempt to be a knight, but it wasn't custom acceptable for a female to pursue knighthood, and that is why Alanna had to disguise herself. My understanding was that Jonathan sent out the proclamation making it clear, whatever the wording is, girls could pursue their knighthood. It was not that he was revoking a ban or lifting a prohibition. It was that he was proclaiming that, yes, girls can pursue a knighthood. That was my understanding. Everything I've basically heard anyone else say and even have read since that first video, I think everybody has said that it was illegal. I could have been wrong about that, which would suck, but that's in my mind as I go into first test, because I'm pretty sure it's going to say soon in first test. Why don't I just look and find out? Because that's not the point of this video. So I may have made a mistake with that, and if it's not in first test, the other two places I would look would be in a spy's guide, and it would also be in the first Alanna book. Might have made a mistake with that. I'm going to be looking for in-text evidence of which it is. If you like Tamora Pierce, if you are learning about Tamora Pierce, go ahead and subscribe, because those are the videos that I'm going to be uploading, at least for the next little while, is about Tamora Pierce. Yes, I write. Yes, someday I will be posting something about writing, because Tamora Pierce inspires so much of my writing. But that's not where we are yet. If you like this video, if you like The Protector of the Small, I'd appreciate a thumbs up on this video. What I want most of all is comments, please, about your experience with Protector of the Small, your experience with Tamora Pierce, or actually if you have a Lady Knight in fiction that is your favorite or that you have fond memories of, drop that title or author, please, because surely there's more, right? That's all I have for today. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your time, and I will see you with the next one.